Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. We are here on a Victory Tuesday to break down the Packers' 24-12 Monday night win against the Los Angeles Rams, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
Good, yeah. Joined in the very next room because I came all the way down to San Diego today.
Exactly.
And so we're recording from the same building.
Oh, yeah. We're here. Our minds are melded. I am Tommy. I am your regular host as well, if I forgot to introduce that. But yeah, and always good to be talking Packers after a win as opposed to a loss. Feel like we haven't been doing that quite as much this year as we would have liked, but we're here now.
And despite our conversations with each other earlier, we are talking here on a Victory Tuesday.
Yes, Victory Tuesday. Packers win. Matt LaFleur stays undefeated versus Sean McVay. Packers move to 6-8. And Dad, you know what that means. They're still alive, and we can still talk relatively not too complicated playoff situations.
We can cue all kinds of, we're not dead yet.
Oh, so not dead yet at all.
You're telling me there's a chance. And that chance is actually growing. It's no longer 1 in a million or whatever it was in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, I mean, they need to win out. They need to have the Commanders lose 2 of the last 3, and they need to have the Seahawks lose 1 of their last 3. It's stranger things have happened.
Yep, but, and that should take care of all of the rest of the tiebreakers as well if the Packers win out.
Exactly.
And the Commanders, they need to lose 2, and they have games against the 49ers, I think. 49ers, Browns, Cowboys. And the Seahawks play the Chiefs this week, as well as
Seahawks also play the Jets and the Rams.
Jets and the Rams. There it goes. That was it. So those are possible. The one that became less probable would be the Giants losing out.
Yes, and if the Giants lose out, they don't need the Commanders to lose 2 or 3. They need essentially 2 of those 3 things to happen. The Commanders one is a little tough with the Cowboys losing this weekend. Seems like they might not have as much to play for in week 18.
That is the fear. The thing we realize is, like, man, what if they just decide we're not even going to try? The Packers are on the doorstep of making it. Everything goes right, and then the Cowboys are like, yep, we're just going to sit everybody.
Yep, that's fine. But yeah, anyways, that's kind of the playoff scenario going forward. Packers still got a shot, and once you're in the dance, anything can happen. But just before we get into what really happened on this Monday Night Football, do our usual post-game, we just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear here, come on back. We do 2 shows a week, a pregame and a postgame. In the offseason, we'll do 1 a week talking about the draft and offseason moves the Packers can do. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find us. You can also find us on YouTube, and if you want to subscribe to us there, Father Son Packers Podcast on YouTube, it would really help our numbers. And then also, if you really like us, you can come check us out on Twitter at Father Son Packers. That's where we post when we're having new episodes out, any collaborations we're doing with different podcasts. Side note, I just guest hosted with Newmock on Talk of the Tundra podcast, part of GSPN Podcast Network. So if you want to go check that out, Talk of the Tundra on any podcast platform. That was super fun. Thanks again to them for having me on. But we also tweet from our Twitter, like I was saying, Packers injury updates, news, notes, any articles we find interesting, stuff like that. So come check us out on Twitter. Go check out that Talk of the Tundra episode. Come follow us subscribe to us on Twitter or on YouTube. Dad, am I forgetting anything else?
I think you pretty much covered it. And I'd say, whether you like us or not, follow us anyway. Follow us to tell us we're great. Follow us to tell us we stink.
We'll take it.
We'll take either one.
Yeah, why not? Hey, there's no such thing as bad press. But anyway, let's get down into this game. But before let's start with a gut check. Dad, how did you feel about this game?
I mostly felt pretty good about this game. There was a little bit of they're kind of letting them hang around for a little while. I did want them to just put them away because the Rams are a bad team, but they were mostly in control of this game. And they had, promising aspects to both the offense and the defense.
Dad, don't forget about the we-fence.
And the we-fence
was excellent.
Was excellent. Yes, and you can look like a competent team against the Rams. So I think is the take home.
Yeah, my gut check was definitely this was their easiest opponent of the year. I mean, the Rams, especially this injured version of the Rams, don't have a whole lot going for them. And the Packers did what you should do against a team that you are better than. They covered the spread. Spread was 7. They won by 12, 24-12. They did a lot of the things that we wanted to see them do. The D-line beat up on mostly beat up on a injured and substitute riddled offensive line for the Rams. The Packers offensive line on the other side beat up on a defensive line that was missing Aaron Donald. And for the most part, the Packers really handled this game. There was a lull in the third quarter where it felt like, they're kind of screwing around a little bit. They're not quite putting them away how you would hope. But for the most part, they really had control of this game throughout. It was only 10-6 was it 10-6 or 13-6 at half? I think it was
10-6 at half.
Yeah, it was only 10-6 at half, only a 4-point game.
And then the Packers scored touchdowns on their 2 possessions of the third quarter to get out to the lead.
Yeah, it was only 10-6 at half, but it felt like more than that. The Packers did play with their food a little bit, but gut check reaction, I felt like this was a nice win from them and a nice all-around showing. Let's get down into the specifics of this game, though, starting with some news that we got before the game, which was Sammy Watkins was cut day of the game. I thought this was very interesting. Matt LaFleur said he was not super thrilled with how it went, but that he understood that the reason that they cut him was to get Patrick Taylor up on the 53. And another piece of news from the game was A.J. Dillon was ruled out with a concussion. We now know the next day that he has already cleared concussion protocol, so that's great news. But with A.J. Dillon going out, having Patrick Taylor on the 53 became a vital part of that move. Like, that was clearly the right decision, especially with Sammy getting only like 11 snaps over the last 2 or 3 games or whatever it was. What did you think about that whole thing?
I was a little surprised, as even though he wasn't getting many targets, his blocking was opening up plays. And I think that was the one thing that we could have potentially missed, is his ability to block as a wide receiver in either the passing game or the run game. I was a little surprised.
I was more surprised by the timing. Like, day of the game was a little surprising.
Day of the game was really very much a surprise. The other thing that surprised me is that
can I ask one more thing?
More about that?
Just, do you think they did it just so the Rams couldn't add him?
By doing it that late?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Because they're pretty short at receiver. And they've had him before.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe that's why they waited until that late. And he's already been picked up now by the Ravens.
Yeah.
Who lost Duvernay to a foot injury in practice.
Yeah, it's tough.
And so, the other thing about, like, Watkins is the player on the team right now who said something about the hand signals.
I mean, Cobb also talked about the hand signals. A few other players did. Yeah, I don't know. And then I think you were about to mention the Chris Barnes thing.
Yeah, that one surprised me when I saw that he was one of the inactives.
Yeah.
So he's like moved below McDuffie on the depth chart, I guess.
And moved below Eric Kendricks. Or sorry, not Eric Kendricks.
Eric Wilson.
Eric Wilson. Wrong Vikings linebacker.
But he mostly... Yeah,
Eric Wilson's more of a...
Kendricks would have been nice.
Yeah, he's getting a little... He's getting a little up there in the years.
He's getting a little up there. But I think Wilson was active because of for special teams.
Yeah, he had another 2 tackles on special teams today. So
he's one of their highest graded special teams players, I think, for the year.
Yeah,
which I didn't realize.
I also thought it was interesting that Barnes is behind McDuffie, which is surprising to me because I thought when they played, Barnes looked better. I don't know. That's just my point of view, at least.
Yep, this is a little surprising, and it means that there are certain things they probably weren't going to try, like different sort of alignments. But anyway, that was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and then otherwise in the injury front, like we said, Dillon left with a concussion, but has already cleared protocol, which is great to hear. Should be good to go for Christmas Day against the Dolphins. And then Bakhtiari was out as expected. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him again this year.
I would say, as I was thinking about this, that if they make the playoffs, then there's a chance they'd see him. Because I think, like, for abdominal surgery, you're probably looking at 4 weeks.
Yeah,
maybe
about a month.
5 weeks. And so, about a month. And so, if they make the playoffs, then I think we probably see him. But I don't expect to see him during the regular season. I think they just rest him till that. But he was playing so well before he had to go out with the surgery that if they make the playoffs, I think he would be ready to go and they would want him back out there.
Yeah, fingers crossed at least. But anyway, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of this game breakdown. And Dad, should we start with the offense? Let's start with the offense.
Sure, let's start with the offense, and we can talk as we do usually about what we wanted to see from the pregame on the offense. And so, I had a few things. My wanted to sees turned out to be all offense, and your wanted to sees turned out to be defense.
Yep.
And so, I wanted to see if Aaron Donald didn't play. I wanted to see them establish the run and use that to try to set a pass. And they certainly used the running backs a lot. We'll talk about more, but that they kept handing it off. Both, actually not just both, but all three, Jones, Dillon, and Taylor were able to run the ball and work Doubs. And the second thing I wanted to see was like them with Doubs back, use Doubs and Watson together in combinations, either in crossing or vertically stacked to see if they could help each other. And there was one play, I think, where on their final drive where Doubs gets a first down conversion and showing like Watson, it goes in motion over to the side and it stays below him. And Doubs just has all this open space to navigate on the crosser to get mid-range gain. And you said you had looked up something about how you had told me before. I don't remember the details of how successful they were when both were on the field together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hit you that stat now, or we can hit that when we get to the good stuff.
If you've got it already in there later, they can bring it back later. And then the last thing I had was, can they put a team away early against that's worse than they are? And the answer to that is no, not really.
Yeah, because they're not that much worse than we are. Like, we are also pretty stinky. Like, we're not a great team either.
We had a monstrous 1-game lead on them before this game. What are you talking about?
I know, right? Just peak football right there. But yeah, I would say the offense for the most part was pretty good today. So let's start with the bad and end with the good. Vegetables before dessert.
Okay.
So for me, there were definitely a few things that were a bit iffy for the offense. And I think for me, it was Rodgers mostly. I thought he was okay in this game, but really high variance. Like, would have some nice throws, and then had the one that sticks in my mind is the interception he threw like 10 or 15 yards past Lazard right into the waiting arms of the safety. And Lazard said after the game that it was on him. He should have kept running. But even if he kept running, he's running right into the defender into coverage, number one. Number two, that ball is still overthrown. I don't think Lazard is that fast. Number three, just like throw it to him. He's sitting down in the zone like how you would often want people to when you see the safety over top and no one else around you. Like, I mean, that was a huge miss. And Rodgers didn't have his thumb taped today, so there's not really any more thumb excuses, in my opinion. And then the other thing with him was he didn't really seem to want to pull the trigger much, which was kind of highlighted by the end of the first half. He didn't want to throw it on the Hail Mary. He didn't end up ripping it. There were a lot of times where he Pat was patting the ball or like went into his throwing motion, then just like swallowed it back up, or like pump fake, and you're just like, okay, is he gonna throw it? Is he gonna throw it? And he seemed really trigger shy in this game. They didn't really attack deep much at all, was another one of my negatives. They only really threw it deep on that Lazard pick and then Christian Watson pass interference that they drew later in the game. I mean, it's tough because you got to take what the defense gives you in some ways, and that cover 2 shell that the Rams like to play does leave stuff open over the middle, and they were attacking the middle very well, so it's hard to like criticize that too much, but I do think it would be nice to see them attack vertically a little bit more. And then my other negative was Nyman kind of struggled in pass protection today. He allowed 4 pressures, which was really the only weak spot on the line. But those are kind of my negatives. It was mostly around Rodgers, and for Rodgers, it was mostly just his standards are very high. So, and he still had decent stats, like 1 touchdown, 1 pick, although the touchdown was mostly Aaron Jones' work, threw for over 200 yards. But I don't know. Those are my negatives. Dad, what did you have as like the parts that you were kind of iffy on for the offense?
So we had a lot of overlapping things. I had generally the deep ball did not do much. I was hoping to see more. I think he only threw like 2. One of them was the INT on the pass to Lard, and the other was the only positive they got from trying, and not even official deep ball, was the pass interference that Watson drew.
Exactly.
Which I actually have as later and elsewhere as a positive. It's one of the things he's doing now.
We take those, yeah.
And I felt like that INT is, I don't think he could possibly be that far off target on the throw. I think it's just miscommunication. And so that has miscommunication on the offense. Like, that INT to Lazard where Rodgers is expecting one thing and Lazard is doing another. Well, Lazard's probably doing is reading where the safety is and then cutting his route short because of where the safety is, because the ball is going right to the safety. So I think it's more of a bad. I think that's more of a bad read by Rodgers than an off-target throw. And then there's also like the little hand signal, another miscommunication on offense. The little hand signal that Watson missed late in the game. That if you want to score touchdowns, you got to run the right route play there. And so that's another miscommunication on offense. And let's just make things as complicated as possible so that
I know, right?
It's hard for everybody to do everything right.
Let's have a bunch of hand signals, that aren't written down, that are passed down via oral history. I mean, it's absurd.
So the question is not what decade do we live in, what millennium do we live in, where it's oral history that we're relying on to pass down the knowledge from player to player.
And it's like, you don't want the other teams to like learn your signals. Like, how paranoid are you that like if you write anything down, it's automatically going to be lost into unusable anymore? I don't know. It's kind of wild to me.
I think the knowledge is being transferred by psychic crystals.
Yes,
Rodgers is in charge.
Exactly. I mean, that's the only foolproof way to do it.
The only way to learn all 30 hand signals is to do ayahuasca.
Yeah, and I mean he said that story was BS. That story has a lot of Packers receivers cited. I don't know. Anyway, let's move to the positives, though, for the offense, because there were...
Oh, well, I did have a little bit more. I also mentioned
the
Nyman thing, the 4 pressures. I thought he probably had the worst game among the linemen. And also a little bit, we again had this like complimentary football thing wasn't so great, where, they get the interception and do nothing with it. And a couple times where they had good field position and weren't able to do anything with it. I thought were a couple of weaknesses on the offensive side.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a minor thing. But if we're talking about where they should be improving, that's something that
you're specifically talking about the time they returned it out. They got the return out to like the 35, and then ended up having to punt, right?
Yeah, and then
that was the big worst one.
And then there was the pick by Rasul that he lateraled back to get him out of field goal range.
We'll talk about that when we get to the defense. Don't you worry. But I think that fumble that they ended up doing was.
What I was talking about is after the good play by the defense, then the offense.
That fumble was BS though.
That fumble was a crock. I'm watching that play. He's like being held in place for like 5 seconds. I actually looked down because I thought the play was over. And then I look back up. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean the Rams have the ball? How did that happen?
It's like the classic, like, oh yeah, the defense says they have it. Like, of course they're going to say they have it, but they definitely blew the whistle dead like 5 minutes ago. And it's like they're actually going to give them that. Like, that's absurd.
The other thing I heard people saying is like, well, as long as he's still fighting, then they can take the ball. It's like, no, they're always still fighting when forward progress is stopped.
Yeah,
every time they blow the whistle on forward progress, they're still fighting. But forward progress is over.
Yeah, but they're not. They're still fighting, but the other side is fighting against them, and they're not moving anywhere. And you blow it dead, so they don't get hit at 1,000,000 miles an hour by a third party coming in. Like,
I don't know who made that argument. I can't remember, but it was like, no, every forward progress play is like that. You blow the whistle on it.
Yeah, and I don't know, like especially like they're still fighting, but it's not like he's moving forward at all. Like they're completely stonewalled.
One guy has his leg pinned, and the other guy's holding him up. And it's like, yeah, it's just an injury waiting to happen. That's exactly the kind of play you should blow the whistle on.
But anyway, we could rant and rave about referees every single game if we wanted to. Let's talk about some of the positives.
Oh yeah, because there's another one I want to talk about as well.
Do you want to? I was gonna say let's talk about the positives in the offense though. Let's be a little more positive. Dad, we won. We won.
I am positive that there should have been another DPI drawn by Christian Watson. How's that?
You mean when Jalen Ramsey was doing the rocket dance across his lap and tripping him the whole way?
Pulls on it so he can catch up because he's not keeping up with him, and then trips him by kicking him in the legs.
And they're like, his legs got. It looks like their legs just got tangled. It's like, yeah, that's called tripping when you do it on purpose. Like, actually, when you think about it.
Yep.
Oh man. But anyway, positives on offense, Dad. Positives on offense. Positives on offense. Positives on offense. Do you want to start or should I?
Why don't you start?
All right. For me, I think the number one thing was the offensive line, mostly, was quite good in this game. Besides the fact that Nyman allowed 4 pressures, I thought that the group really took advantage of a weakened D-line that didn't have Aaron Donald and pass protected very well and got the run game going really well, which I'll talk about in a second, is also another one of my positives. Zach Tom was great again, starting in place of Bakhtiari. According to Jacob Morley on Twitter, who is in turn citing PFF, of the 12 tackles from the 2022 draft class who have logged 300 snaps, he's allowed the least total pressures with 4. He has their best pass blocking grade, and he has their best pass blocking efficiency. So they have really found a gem with him in that 4th round. He has been everything they've wanted him to be and more in terms of positional versatility, steadiness. Sure, he's a little small, and sure, his arms are a little short, but he's getting the job done. And I know he hasn't had to play against a ton of super powerful rushers, but he's been very good when called upon.
Right. His lateral mobility and speed, he just gives him a great tool for holding up against speed rushers. And also, I think somebody said, I forget who worded it this way, he has a great knack for keeping his butt pointed at the quarterback between the quarterback and the pass rusher.
And then I wanted to say just like Runyon and Myers didn't notice them, which is good. I mean, Myers had actually a couple nice drive blocks in the run game, I thought. And then Elton, I think, you know how the old saying goes, your praise has to be louder than your disrespect. A lot of people were saying that like he was kind of washed and wasn't playing that well. I think the last like 4 or 5 games at left guard, he has been almost as good as he's ever been playing out there at left guard. I mean, he has really been really steady since moving back there. And also, since recovering from a catastrophic knee injury, we're still, like, we just hit barely, 12 months since that injury.
We might be 13 now.
No, he hurt it in December, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I thought it was November. Oh, but anyway, the people who are like getting on his case was like 9 months out from his ACL surgery are kind of insane.
He's a 300-pounder with a torn ACL, and he came back in 9 months. Like, cut him some slack. I don't know. And the conversation on whether or not they have the money to re-sign him it's a valid one. They're going to have to look at that because how much can you afford to pay a guard when you're paying a quarterback this much and when you have all these other contracts on the books? That's definitely going to be a legitimate conversation to have, but he's looking like he deserves the money from whoever wants to pay him that money. Beyond the offensive line playing really well, like I said, the run game was really good. Kind of hit a bit of a lull in the third quarter, but Jones, 17 carries for 90 yards, 5.3 a carry. Side note, he had 4 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown. Dillon, 11 carries for just 36 yards, but had 2 touchdowns. He was averaging 5 a carry going into half and then lost some of that efficiency in the third quarter when they hit that aforementioned lull. And then he got knocked out with that concussion before he could come back in the fourth and get some of those yards back like Jones did. And then also had 3 catches for 35 yards. And then Patrick Taylor, 4 carries for 15 yards. So just overall, they were really running the rock well. Beyond that, I thought Matt LaFleur, this was a really nice game for him and Stenovich. I felt like they were way more in their bag than they usually had been this year, especially like just the big like sign of that were those little motions to the Christian Watson motion, play fake the other way, roll out, dump off passes in the flat with him just already at full speed running in motion. I don't know why you don't run like 4 of those a game because that feels like a free 10 yards. I mean, the way he turned the corner on that one guy,
I was watching that play and he had very little space. And the guy had an excellent angle and he still was able to get the corner
so fast
and get an additional like 5 to 7 yards because just based on pure speed.
Yeah, and then like I was saying with Watson, just to continue on that, the rookie receivers were great today. Watson, 4 catches on 6 targets for 46 yards, and excellent blocking in the run game. You just see what they saw in him when they traded 2 second-round picks for him. The dynamism, the ability to do the dirty work in the run game, just everything LaFleur wants in a receiver. And then Doubs, 5 catches on 5 targets for 55 yards in just 23 snaps. According to Jacob Morley on Twitter, I thought this was a really interesting fact. Rodgers was 7 of 7 for 91 yards and a touchdown in the 13 snaps that they were both on the field together. I mean, this was the vision for the receiver room, like over the offseason, was rookies stepping in late in the season and just being the go-to guys.
So which vision is this? Is this the white recreated vision by the government, or is this the original vision that was Killed by Thanos.
Yeah, this was the young Vision. This was the Vision as he first came out of the chamber when the body had first been built and they had just put the Mind Stone in. Is that one?
And
because
he's able to lift the Mjolnir.
Exactly. It's still not fully formed yet, but you see the potential. That's what I'm going with.
That sounds fair.
But yeah, I mean, and that's my last positive I wanted to touch on. But man, I'm so excited to watch those two for the next however many years we're gonna have them. Because Doubs came back from injury and didn't miss a beat. I mean, he was great.
Yeah, I have him as for my positives. If I guess
go ahead. Those are
mine.
mine.
So I had him that he came back and led the team in catches and receiving yards. They already mentioned that I think they were actually able to complement each other and open up plays for each other. And that blocking play you mentioned, Watson's blocking, the one play, I think it was on Jones's run, where he basically takes his player he's blocking out of the play entirely and buries him on the ground. And because he blocks that guy so effectively, he impedes the next defender from getting close to Jones before he can get to the end zone.
Did you see what his dad tweeted on Twitter?
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering if you had seen that too. I meant to ask you earlier that he's always... No, he didn't teach him how to block there. He's always been a good blocker. Or something.
Yeah, because someone had said, right? This is what happens when, when great athletes go to North Dakota State, they learn to do, the little things right. And then his dad was like, let me just correct this real quick. He has always been a great, willing blocker. North Dakota State helped him, perfect his technique in blocking. That's definitely true. Helped him become a better blocker. But he has always been, this type of, force in the run game. I just thought it was fun that his dad was like, hold up a minute. Let me just fire up the old Twitter machine and do some... I thought it was funny. But anyway, continue with your positives.
Right. So then I had... I really liked the fact that they were able to finish off a game with an 8-minute drive. Just end all chances that the Rams had. It's something that's just so satisfying to see them do, to just control the clock and run it out. And a team might think they have 2 more possessions left and they get 0. That was really nice to see.
Yeah, just the boa constrictor offense that they had the past 2 years, where it's just we're just gonna take our ball and go home. We're just gonna hold on to this thing for 8.5 minutes, and there were only 3 possessions in the fourth quarter total. That's when you have the lead. That's ideal offense. That's perfect offense.
Yep. And then the other thing I like, they really leaned on the running backs, and for running and receiving. They had good games from Dillon in short yardage, getting those 2 touchdowns. Jones getting some chunk carries, both of them getting good passing work. And even Taylor, when he came in, when Jones went out, was, I think, pretty effective running the ball. It was nice to see Watson starting. I feel like we've seen this for a couple weeks now, but expanding his sort of repertoire of how he's helping the team with the drawing DPI. I mean, one that wasn't called and one that was called. And also making contested catches. It's not just when he's running open downfield on a crosser. He's actually more and more being able to shield the defender and make the catches under duress, which is really nice to see of how he could really turn into, I think, a monster with combining all of those abilities. Mm-hmm. I thought the run blocking was better in this game than we've seen most of the season. I think for most of the year we've seen, well, as the offensive line, I should say, has coalesced into what we wanted as our starters, that the pass pro has been pretty good, but the run blocking has been a little subpar. I thought we were getting more surge. You see that with some of the interior linemen, with Jekyll's having an excellent game, and I think Runyon also having a good game in run blocking, and that we were able to get a little more push this time in getting run blocking. And that maybe also is reflected in actually scoring 2 touchdowns on short yardage, something we've kind of struggled with this season.
Yeah.
And actually under LaFleur in general. It seems
and
if we've got inside the 5-yard line, we struggle so much to get a touchdown.
And they said in the broadcast, I think it was, that we are here. I have this note in here. We are scoring a touchdown on just 50% of goal-to-goal situations in the NFL, in goal-to-goal situations, which is worse in the NFL. matches the eye test. Like, we cannot punch that thing in at all.
Yeah, drives me crazy. And yet we give it to the other team so readily.
Well, you know who else does is the Rams. They were tied for third worst in allowing touchdowns on goal-to-go situations. So I think, what was it? Newmark said a movable force versus a stoppable object.
Yep, on both sides, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Packers have definitely struggled in goal-to-go ever since the year that they were like the best red zone offense ever 2 years ago. And I don't know why they just don't use Dillon every time down there. It feels like they don't use him enough. They could use him more. They've been using him more and more, but it feels like they could use him more. Do you have any more?
Another thing,
go
that
ahead.
is actually related to that I think the year when they were so effective in the red zone, there's also this thing about how they had been so good on their like first scripted drives. Well, this year they stink.
Yeah, they had eight straight games without scoring on their opening script. Sorry.
Right. So I'll give a little bit about how this, so that's mentioned during the game about how this has been a struggle. Well, not only that, they are failing to score on the first drive of the game and the first drive of the second half. So in the last games, and the Bears, they got 0 scores in those two. Eagles, 0. Titans, they got a field goal in the second half. Cowboys, 0. Lions, 0. Bills, field goal in the second half. Washington, 0. Jets, 0. Giants, field goal in the first and then the second. So you have to go back to the Giants game before they got any kind of score in the first half. And then this was the first game all year, the entire year, where they actually scored on both of those possessions. First of the game and first of the second half.
The first?
The first all year. And it is the first game.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 6-8 Green Bay Packers.
Yep. So they've had a few games where they had touchdowns twice in those two possessions. Once against New England, and then once against Tampa Bay, where they got a touchdown. And I think, and that's it.
Wait, so this was their first game?
This is the first game where they scored on both possessions that started at a half.
So on both
half.
the first possession of the game and the first possession of the second half?
And their first possession of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where they've been. Like, when they first time they possessed the ball after getting the most coaching they can before the game or at halftime. You know, they've only been able to, this is the first time, took to week
15th
game.
15, please. Week 15.
15.
14th
15.
game. Thank you.
14th
Put
game.
some respect on the Green Bay Packers,
Oh, right.
please.
They didn't wait nearly so long. Yeah.
No one stops the Packers 14 games in a row. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think, a learning.
Nice to see them do that now. And so it's like,
yeah.
Though it took, so the bad part is what happened in all those other games. But the good part is they scored on both of those possessions this time. And I like to see, like, they crushed the Rams in yardage, 345 to 156.
And they must have crushed him in time of possession too. Like, that must have been
37 to 22.
Yeah.
37 something to 22 something. And yards per play, 5.1 to 3.6. So a lot of massive differences there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good game for the offense, especially when you're comparing it to the Rams' offense. I mean, low-hanging fruit there, but we'll take it. Should we move on to the defense, do you think?
Yes, any fruit associated with the Rams' offense is not just low-hanging. It has fallen to the ground and rotted.
Yes,
the bar. The Rams' offense.
The bar is in the basement. Like that, the bar is very low. Anyway, let's move on to the defense. Let's start with the bad. Let's start with the things we wanted to see. What I wanted to see specifically was I wanted to see them be aggressive with Baker. We talked about how their O-line has really struggled. They lost their starting center in this game on the second snap of the game with a strained calf, unfortunately. And Baker takes a lot of sacks. Those were that was why we wanted them to be aggressive with Baker. And they did this. They had 5 sacks on Baker. They had a lot of pressures. They had 9 quarterback hits. Those are definitely positives. They definitely checked that box, despite like not really having a whole lot of players with pass rushing juice, I guess would be the way I would describe it. But let's start with the negatives so we can end with the positives, because this was a win. For me, at least, the tough parts on defense were the secondary play and the game plan. I thought was kind of iffy, and this all is going to tie back to Joe Barry. I think Joe Barry has really struggled this year. But the secondary play and game plan, specifically just playing so much outside leverage, off coverage, with no help inside. The Higbee touchdown is a perfect example of this. Rasul Douglas did this many times, where he was just off and outside on these guys and just giving them tons of daylight. And they would just track back to the ball, catch, here's your free 13 yards, here's your free touchdown. And it happened over and over again. That was really tough, and it was either a game plan thing or a player thing, but I thought the secondary was pretty meh in this game overall against a very depleted receiver core with Van Jefferson as their number one. No shade to him. He's a very solid 3-4 guy, but they're missing their top two receivers. Overall discipline, again, this kind of ties back to Joe Barry. According to the broadcast, Packers now lead the league in unnecessary roughness penalties after Rudy Ford hit the guy out of bounds for no reason and just gave him 15 free yards. They have 6 of those on the year, just tracking back to poor coaching and poor discipline. The overall discipline idea is just kind of beautifully encapsulated in Rasul Douglas's pick. I mean, he makes not a great play. Kenny Clark makes a great play to hit Baker's arm, and so Baker throws a lollipop right into Rasul Douglas's hand. Rasul runs 5 yards, and then somehow the spirit of Jacoby Myers from the Patriots enters his body, and he's hopping. So one guy's grabbing his leg. He's hopping around. He's not going down. He's looking for someone to lateral it to, and you're just like, come on, man, don't do it. Don't do it.
Somebody
don't do
tell
it.
Rasul that we're not trailing as the clock is running out on this play.
And he, not only does he lateral it, he's falling down and pitches it backhand.
Not even a lateral.
Not even looking where he's throwing it.
You remember how you play whatever, touch football or even tackle back at the park with friends, and you'd stand sideways and just quick snap it backwards?
Yeah, and that's
just the way he throws it. He's not even looking at it. He's looking ahead and he just flings it backwards. And it's almost like one of those rugby hikes.
And to tie this back to Joe Barry, he says he practices that Rasul Douglas said after the game that he does this in practice, and he practices this. Someone should be stop this man. The coach, it's the coaching staff's job to see that one time in practice and be like, I don't ever want to see that again.
What in the world are you guys doing out here?
And Rasul said, yeah, I tell the guys when I look at them, if they see me look at them, that it's coming. Someone somewhere along the chain, either one of the team captains, either one of the positional coaches, the defensive coordinator, I don't care who it is, someone has to put a stop to that the second they get wind of it, because that almost cost them a huge turnover in this game and almost gave the Rams a ton of momentum.
It would have given them first down again, because it would have changed possession and changed back again.
Yeah, and not to mention they gained 30 yards.
Doing is the eye contact? Is that a hand?
It's like the hand signals,
that's
worse.
That's what the defense uses instead of hand signals.
He's like, I'll give you the look. I'll give you the look, and you'll know. My goodness,
he's got that look.
Hey, how are they supposed to know that you're giving them the look when you're not facing them? That's my other question. Just a follow up. But yeah, it all kind of ties back to Joe Barry. I don't think that if you see him doing that in practice, I don't understand why that's allowed to continue. But here we are. And then the last thing I have for the negative for the defense is explosive runs. For the most part, they kept the run game in check, but Akers had carries of 15 yards, 18 yards, and 19 yards, which made up 52 of his 65 total rushing yards on just 3 plays and allowed him to end with 5.4 yards per carry. For the most part, they were bottling up the run a lot of the game. And then those just explosive runs just kind of made it seem like the run defense was really poor. And those explosive runs came when Kenny Clark wasn't in and when Jaron Reed wasn't in and when Dean Lowry and TJ Slayton were the D tackles on the play. I mean, 2 of those explosive runs. I mean, the first one came with Kenny in the game and Reed in the game was the first play of the game. But the other 2 came just back to back in the same drive with Lowry and Slayton in. And you're just like, all right, why are these guys still in? We just keep getting gashed. But yeah, those were my negatives for the defense. Dad, what did you have?
So I had a couple of the same things about the mental error penalties that they've done over and over again. In this case, like a discipline penalty on forward out of bounds, like you're well out of bounds. Stop trying to
So
tackle him.
I don't know.
The ridiculous lateral, the poor coverage on Higbee on the touchdown, where he's just is so far back and outside that when Higbee makes his cut, he has no chance of making a play. And then the other thing is like they really made Akers look like a pretty respectable running back with 100 yards from scrimmage. And we actually talked a little bit about this as one of the possible things the Rams had going for him is that Akers had been trending up. Is this maybe his best outing in terms of yardage for the year? It's all he looked like he had some juice and looked pretty good against us.
Yeah,
and I hate it when we keep giving players get right games.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy who was pretty much like off the team. They were trying to trade him. He was completely benched, and yeah, and with no offensive line in front of him, and yeah,
yep.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is.
And we had some missed tackles again this game. I think we were credited with 6. Not as bad as some games.
It didn't feel that bad.
I guess it's not that bad. We've had. This is true. It's a big improvement over 20.
You don't say.
So just a couple players with some missed tackles. So I should say that wasn't so bad. And so we could get to the. So some players were kind of invisible. Amos kind of lost the ball and lost where Atwell was when he ran into him on that 40-yard DPI.
But he had a really nice tackle for loss on one play where he shot past the blocker before the blocker could make contact with him and tripped him up. It was a really nice tackle. Mm-hmm. To be fair,
it was not all bad. Yes, he was making some more positive plays than he had been. I would say. So for that, we should get to our good things.
Oh, is that all the negatives you had?
I did not have that much.
So positive, Dad. So cheery today. The holiday spirit. Yeah. The holiday spirit is filling you.
I mean, we didn't have that much. There was, I think, our defensive penalties they're not that many. We had the one on Amos, and we had the cut, the chop block, as they called it on Jair. It's been 2 weeks in a row, and the one on Ford that we already talked about.
Yeah, and I know the announcers were saying they thought that Tutu Atwell might have given Jair a little shove in the back that made him go low, so hard to tell.
Right, so they didn't give up too many penalties, and they didn't give up much in the one thing that did drive, because you mentioned these sort of the leverage. The 3rd and 13, they still had another third and long conversions, driving me crazy, where he's just runs down the field and turns and he's open past the sticks.
Yeah,
we have to make it so easy.
The Rams started, I have it written down here, started 3 of 6 on 3rd down with an average yards to go of 9.8.
Yeah.
So early on, at least, they were just really letting them do whatever they want. But they kind of tightened up as the game went on. Let's talk about some of the positives, Dad. Let's stay positive. I thought that the D-line really held up their end against a beleaguered, there's your vocab word of the day, Rams offensive line. Like I said earlier, 5 sacks, 9 quarterback hits. Specifically, Preston Smith had a really nice day, 2 sacks and 4 hits from him. And it also felt like Kenny's best game of the year. Numbers weren't really super flashy, but it just felt like he was beating double teams all game long. He caused that pick that Rasul Douglas had. He had a couple tackles for loss, it felt like, and it felt like his most, you could feel his presence in the middle of that line, and you could feel his absence when he wasn't in there, more so than in any other game so far this year, in my opinion.
Yeah. Shall I go on then?
That's honestly my only positive right now.
I had Kenny with his best game in a while, where he was getting in the backfield and making plays. I thought I should mention, I don't have it in my notes, but I think Jaron Reed actually, he was made some nice tackles in the middle to stop some of the runs, and I thought he had a nice game compared to those. And now, cue the Bernie Sanders meme. I am once again asking you to play Devontae Wyatt more.
Please.
So he had 9 snaps on defense this game.
It is week 15. He is a 24-year-old first-round rookie. Why doesn't he play?
Yep. So since getting, I think, 20 snaps against the Eagles, I thought, okay, maybe he's starting to turn around. Nope. 9 last game and 9 this game.
You're coming off the bye.
He had some nice reps. He's getting well graded. He was like their second highest graded defender in this game. We had a pair of nice reps where on the possession that ended in the interception, he had the run stop for no gain on first, half a sack with Hollins on the second down, and he's actually coming around with a decent pass rush from the backside as Kenny's coming in and hits his elbow for the INT. So he's actually had 3 good reps in a row on that play, and then he only had like 6 other reps the whole game. I think you just are not trying hard enough to find what you have there.
I don't get it because it's like he's the only guy besides Kenny for that D-line that's not just a pocket pusher. Like he's the only guy who can actually like beat his isn't a slow burn pass rusher, like who can actually like get under his man and beat him.
A little burst.
I don't get it.
And then I had Preston as well and the 5 sacks. It was Preston with 2 sacks and 4 QB hits. But also I just want to point out this play. I really liked the attack by Quay Walker of Akers in the backfield of the Rams. First play in the second half.
That was fun.
He saw the play, and he just shot the gap and drilled him in the backfield. And
I thought it was... Sorry, go ahead.
I believe... And I was like, this is what they were looking for when they drafted him.
Yeah,
and it was such a nice play. I'm hoping we'll start to see as he spots more of those plays, a little quick, that fast, and his ability to react with his speed and power to impact the game more.
And I thought it was his best game of the year. I thought he looked great. He had the sack forced fumble on Baker as well. They let him rush the passer a bit, which was great. PFF had him as our highest graded defender, I believe, for what that's worth.
And it is also by PFF by far his best single game grade on defense.
And it felt like it watching it. He felt really impactful there in the center. And it's with Campbell back. So, maybe that's, it is so hard to be a rookie linebacker and have to be the green dot guy and have like no real veteran next to you. Like that's tough. That's probably why he wasn't doing all that much for like 3 or 4 weeks.
It may free him up to be what he's best at. I had this thought about that play. He's like Adam Sandler as the water boy.
Yeah.
He's just flying in and knocking the guy down.
Bobby Boucher. But yeah, no, he was, and they, with Campbell in there, they can let him rush the passer a little more, which I think is a real talent I think can develop, and he already showed some flashes there that he's got some of that juice.
He's got some ability to blitz, and I think they've had times when before Campbell got hurt, they were actually lining him up on the edge every once in a while. And I think that's some of the stuff that you can just free him up to go make a play, stop thinking about having to process the entire field and figure out what everybody should be doing. Just go out and make a play.
Exactly. And it's nice to see him kind of coming alive down the stretch, and hopefully they can let Wyatt get some more opportunities so maybe he can come alive down the stretch. Do you have anything more for the defense, or should we touch on the we-fence just for a little bit?
I think those are my main points for the defense.
All right, let's hit the we-fence. I've been waiting all pod for this because Keyshawn Nixon is HIM with a capital H. He is him. Man, I don't understand why that man wasn't back there from the start of the year. I don't get it. I understand that in practice a lot of the times, like you can't really see when you're practicing returns, you're mostly just seeing how people field the punts and kicks. Like they're not actually doing a whole much to show their juice and show what they actually have back there. But boy, I just don't see what they were seeing before.
So the question I've seen people post is like, why didn't Bisaccia know? He saw him for a whole year last year. On the Raiders.
What did he have? He had, let me just check this.
Maybe, I guess, did he ever get the ball in his hands?
I don't know, but let me just check this real quick. He had, for kick returns, 3 returns for 95 yards, including a long of 52, and then there was another one that was called back because of a hold that didn't really impact the play. Like I thought it was a hold. It was a bit iffy, but it wasn't really like anything to do to him. He had returned it out to like the 40. And then 2 punt returns for 36 yards with so 1 for 19 and 1 for 17. I mean, I know that the Rams have like struggled with opponent field position all year, but he made a huge difference in this game. Like, and also shout out Mason Crosby. I think just broke Brett Favre's record for most consecutive games as a Packer.
As a Packer, yes. I think it did. It was already tied.
I think so, or he tied it. Yeah, but it's something up there. I just figured we'd throw that in the Weefence side. But yeah, Keyshawn Nixon, man, what a returner!
It's fun to watch and say, maybe he's going to break it the whole way.
Yeah,
which is something to think as opposed to maybe he'll hold on to the ball this time.
Yeah, maybe he'll just let it bounce in the end zone. Maybe he'll just let it bounce in the end zone and we'll get a touchback.
Maybe he'll get a touchback.
That's like, I was praying that the other team would kick it far enough, and now they're kicking it away from him. And then the other guy who got it fumbled it, but don't worry about too much about that. Did you see the one they popped up short right?
Pop-up one?
And I don't remember who it was. I think, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but they muffed it a little bit.
Glimpse of the back of his jersey when I watched that play. And I'm also thinking, would that have gone out of bounds?
Yeah. I mean, but it is what it is. I think, just Nixon was great. The field goal operation looked pretty smooth in cold weather, so that's nice. I thought the Weefence was definitely a positive today, but let's move on down to...
Yeah, and I think they've moved up to like
not last
17th in the league. They're actually getting into middle of the pack range in team special teams.
Okay. All right, we'll take those.
So this is like massive improvement over what we had been.
Yeah. Well, let's start wrapping this up. Player of the game, Dad. Who'd you got?
So on offense, I had Aaron Jones. I think he scored the touchdown. He took over the rushing, essentially, when Dylan went out. He was catching passes. He was getting chunk plays. And then on defense, I had Preston Smith, in addition to the sacks and quarterback hits. I actually think he did hit what for him is kind of generally good run defense as well. So I liked the game that he had. He was playing well out there.
Yeah, and for me, players of the game, Nixon, like I was talking about, was super electric today, and then Aaron Jones also was really solid. Those are my players of the game. I thought the Jones one was easy. He was, I think, easily the best player on offense today. You can maybe make an argument for Doubs, or maybe one of the O-linemen if you want to give Tom some shine for stepping in.
Or Jenkins maybe.
Yeah, because you're not hearing a guard's name and they're running the ball well. It's probably a good sign. But anyway, that about wraps it up for us here on the Father Son Packers podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. If you like what you hear, we'll be doing a pregame this week for the Christmas Day game. Dolphins, we're playing them in Miami. It's a must-win game. Every single game is here from now on. So come check that out if you like. We'll also be doing post-games, etc., etc. Come check us out on Twitter, like we said, at Father Son Packer. Come subscribe to us on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcasts. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.